Afternoon. I'm Melinda Frame, a member of the League of Women Voter, Lansing area. The Lansing Area League of Women Voters would like to welcome you today to our January virtual luncheon. Today we will be discussing online schools in the charter world. The League of Women Voters is known for promoting citizen participation, particularly through voting, but it also works to educate citizens on important topics and on policies. If you'd like to learn more about the League of Women Voters, please visit our website at lwvlansing.org. So, as you may be aware, this year, the COVID pandemic unexpectedly drove K through 12 schools to teaching online. Parents, teachers, students alike were forced to navigate this new format, often sitting for hours at a time in front of their computers. However, before the pandemic hit, online schooling was available in a variety of formats. So today we would like to discuss how traditional online schooling functions. For today's webinar, we are pleased to welcome two teams of speakers who will teach us more about online education in Michigan. First, we have a group from the Michigan Virtual Charter Academy. This is Michigan's largest online charter school program, and they will demonstrate for us what online schooling actually looks like. Second, we have representatives from the Michigan Department of Education Charter School Office, and they will educate us on the role of the state in virtual education. Now, just to note, we have members of our education committee who will be fielding questions at the end of our presentations. So if you have any questions during the presentations, please enter those in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the webinar. So for now, I would like to introduce our presenters from the Michigan Virtual Charter Academy. With us today, we have Dr. Sheila Boning, the high school principal, Mrs. Tanya Coopers, the elementary school principal, Sandy Bruck, the academic administrator of special programs, and Randy Rodriguez, who is head of the school. So now I'll turn this over to Sandy.
All right, thank you very much, Melinda. I'm just going to share my screen here. And start the presentation. Here we go. Thank you very much for inviting us to come back and present again to the entire group this afternoon. And we're very happy to be here with everyone and talk about our school with you. So we are from Michigan Virtual Charter Academy, and we are quite a large school, and you'll hear about that in a little bit when we talk about our history. And we've already been introduced, so here is a slide with our pictures and our names next to those. And so I won't reintroduce ourselves for you. And before we begin with our presentation, I wanted to show our mission statement and introduce our head of school. And so our head of school has helped us in coming up with a vision and a mission for our school since he began about the same time that I did 2.5 years ago, I think it's been. And we really needed to define who we were. And this mission statement really encompasses who we are as a school. So I want to introduce to the group our head of school and our fearless leader, Mr. Randy Rodriguez.
Thank you, Sandy. It is a real pleasure and an honor to be with you today as a representative of digital education. Michigan Virtual Charter Academy has been around for about 11 years, and I'll let the rest of the history come with Tanya in just a minute. But I think it's real critical for us. Our vision is twofold. One is we want to be leaders of virtual education, and two, we want to ensure that all of our students meet their greatest potential. And where those two intersect is where our mission really comes to play. And I love this mission statement, as Sandy has said, and I am going to read it to you. As leaders of innovative education, Michigan Virtual Charter Academy is dedicated to developing learning systems of excellence that removes barriers, creates opportunities, empowers students, and delivers hope. Virtual education is not for everyone. But I think with the pandemic coming, we've realized that maybe it's for more than originally once thought. And I think the other thing that's happened with the pandemic is that, first of all, this vision and mission were written prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic has brought more relevance to what we do every day. Now everybody has had a hand at trying virtual education, and they find that it's not so easy, and there can be many challenges. But it thrust us into the forefront of continuing to seek to be those leaders. Today, you're going to get a great opportunity to see some outstanding educators present to you some of the ways that we establish that and talk about how we continue to move forward in that. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to the team. And again, thank you for having us today.
Thank you, Randy. So Mrs. Tanya Kuipers is our elementary principal, and she has been with the school for a very long time, I think 8 years, and she's going to share the history of our school and then talk about the elementary program and the curriculum and the wonderful things we do for students.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Tanya Kuipers. This is actually my 10th school year with Michigan Virtual Charter Academy. 9 calendar years. So I've had the wonderful opportunity of really seeing MVCA grow over the last decade. We were founded in 2010, and this is currently the 11th school year. And when we were first founded back in 2010, we were one of 2 online charter schools operating in the state of Michigan. The other one was Connections Academy. And we offered 2 options for high school students. We could do a completely virtual program where all of the students were just from their homes anywhere in the state of Michigan. But then we also had a blended learning program for students who had dropped out of traditional public school. And those students would be able to come to our learning center in Grand Rapids at our office and spend some of their time in that hybrid setting. At the time, our cap was only 1,000 students, but then by the 2013 school year, with some changes in the state legislature, we were able to not only open up more schools in the state of Michigan, but we were able to lift that 1,000 student cap, and it was increased for that 2013-14 school year. We actually got up to about 6,000 students that year. Now we are currently serving 3,200 students, and it's completely virtual. If you want to go to the next slide, Sandy. Okay, so like Sandy said, I'm the elementary principal for kindergarten through 5th grade, and I wanted to walk you through what a day looks like with our kindergartners. I chose kindergarten because I think that's a grade that people have a hard time understanding how a 5-year-old is going to be doing virtual learning. So this is a sample. I took a sample of a student's schedule from this week of school. You can see the top in the blue, this student has all of those synchronous sessions. So those are the live sessions that the student's going to with their teacher. And in a little bit, we'll see actually about a 4-minute clip from one of our wonderful kindergarten teachers. All of our students have either a morning meeting or an afternoon meeting with their homeroom teacher every single day so that we can really build those relationships with the students and with their teachers. And then they have a combination of whole group reading sessions. So you see on Monday and Thursday for kindergarten, they have their whole group sessions. Those are those live sessions with their teachers. They have all the subjects live with their teachers at the elementary: writing, social studies, DIBELS, those of you familiar with progress monitoring for reading, we administer DIBELS, kindergarten through 5th grade, so that we can monitor the reading progress for our students. You'll see the student at 11 o'clock on Tuesday has something called Win Reading. And what that is what I need. So we have it for reading and we have it for math. It's actually something that we do daily. Our intervention teachers are all teaching at this time, our special education teachers, our homeroom teachers, and they are pulling in those students based on our assessments and what those students need for those specific standards. I have a little bit more on that on the next slide. Then down below, you'll see the asynchronous learning. So this is all in the online school. We have this wonderful curriculum that's developed by our platform, which is Stride, previously K-12 Incorporated. And so when the student is not with their teacher in these live sessions, they're actually at home with what we call their learning coach. Typically it's a parent, it doesn't have to be. And they are working in all of this online curriculum, which is a very rigorous curriculum, and it's ensuring that they're learning all of those standards that they need to learn. So you can see every day they have a portion of the asynchronous work in the online school, and then they also have that time with their teachers. So we're able to offer both with our platform. So Sandy, if you want to go to the next slide. I just pulled some snapshots of one of the math lessons that this kindergartner did this week in the online school. It's really interactive if we could see it live. They're actually able, it says show 12 tickets, drag 12 tickets into the box. So this was after they did a lesson with their learning coach, and it's now all online. The learning coach has printed materials, they have manipulatives, they get things sent to them, base 10 blocks sent to them. And they're able to work through that lesson with the learning coach. And then they go onto the computer and they're actually dragging those tickets over. And then the teacher is able to see if they're getting all of the questions correct. So the program is actually pretty interactive, even when they're not working with the teachers. And then the same thing for that next one, they're just putting the balls, I believe, into that blue box. Sandy, if you want to go to the next slide, I think I just have some more screenshots. Yep, so this is one of the assessments at the kindergarten level. I think there were about 9 questions, and it's really going to help them understand that concept that they're learning when they're working on counting. And then the teacher is able to see, who do I still need to pull in even for those small groups? And we're going to see a clip of that, I believe, on the next slide. Okay, this is one of our kindergarten teachers. We have 3 kindergarten teachers at MVCA, and her name is Amy Jameson. And you'll be seeing a clip of one of those WIN sessions. I believe there were 4 students in this session, and the objective was writing numbers and counting on from a given number. And it's just a small group of students who need that additional practice with the standard. And you're going to see a math talk that she does at the beginning of her lesson. Typically she's on webcam. She wasn't for this at this time. After what I recorded, she was. But Sandy, if you want to go ahead and play, it's about 4 minutes, and then we'll move on to the high school program.
And who can tell me how many are in this and how did you get your answer? Remember, our goal is to try to count on. So really think about what you see in this first row. Yes, Jackson. Can you help me out? How many are on this 10 frame? 7. 7. Good. How did you get your answer, Jackson? What did you do to figure it out? Did you have to count one by one? And that's okay. I counted. So did you count 1, 2, 3? Did you count them all like that? Yeah. One by one? All right. Good job, Jackson. Okay, that's one way to find it for sure. Did anyone figure it out a different way? I know this morning in math we were really talking about different ways we could solve it. Yes, Eli. Did you solve it a different way? You got 7, right? Did do 5 and 2. Oh, so you knew there was 5, and then did you count 6, 7? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Good job, Eli. So Eli said he knew there was 5 because we know this is a 10 frame, right? And so there's 5 on the top and 5 on the bottom. So he saw the 5 and then he counted on 6, 7. Very nice. Any other way? Aslan, did you come up with it a different way or no? I just saw your hand go up. No? Okay, that's fine. Let's go on to another one. What about this one? Who thinks they can tell us how many are in this one and how did you get your answer? Aslan, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, wait a second. Let's see if everybody's ready. Give me a green check when you're ready. I know Jackson's ready. Oh, good. Aslan is definitely ready. Hey, Annabelle. All right, Aslan, go ahead. Tell us the answer. How many dots are here? 9. 9. Very good. And Aslan, how did you get your answer? I counted on 5. So you counted on 5? So you said, can you help me out? So you said 5, and then what'd you say? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Very good. Nice job. Love it. Okay, did anybody figure out a different way? I'm pretty sure, Elijah, you probably did the 5 and counted on. Did anyone come up with a different way to find the answer to this one? No, that's okay. Oh, somebody did. Jackson, did you have a different way? 10 minus 1, 9. Oh, 10 minus 1 is 9. Is that what you said? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, he knew that there was 10 in a 10 frame, right? If you take away 1, you get 9. Good job. Listen to all these amazing explanations. I love it. All right, let's try another one. One more, friends. This one's going to be a little trickier. Are you ready? All right, give me a green check when you've got an answer. Everybody, Annabelle, what did you get? What's your answer?
I got,
We have a 10 frame, and add 2 more is 12. Very good. So she knew she had a 10 frame. She added 2 more. She got 12. How do we write the number 12, Annabelle? A 1, no, a 2, no, a 1 and a 2. You got it. Yep. Right. Good. I noticed you corrected yourself. Good job. Yep. So we have one group of 10, friends. That's the 1, right? And then there's the 2 1s. I know that looks really messy, but you know what this is. So this is our one group of 10. Boop. And our 2 1s. And that gives us 12, right? So I love it. She said she got 10, and then she knew 2 more, 11, 12. Any other ways that we solve this? Did anybody come up with another way? No? Everybody accept?
Okay, so hopefully, oh, I don't know why my video is not showing there, but hopefully that was able to help show you what it looks like at kindergarten. Those students all had started out struggling a little bit at the beginning of the year with counting, but she's been working really hard with these students, and you can see they're really starting to grasp that. So I'm going to now pass it over to Sheila and to the high school.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to share what we do at our high school. And on the slide that is coming up, you will see kind of a day in the life of a student in the high school. And that is the high school schedule. So if we can look at the slide that has the schedule, you can see some of the classes that are offered. And we follow the requirements that the state requires for graduation, just like any other brick and mortar high school. And our students accomplish those core courses they need to, as well as the electives. But you can see just a typical schedule on a Monday for a student. We have English classes, algebra, US history. We offer AP classes as well as dual credit courses. We have a partnership with Western Michigan University. We also have, you'll see the 12 o'clock The optional attendance for the Read Aloud Cafe is a club that one of our teachers is offering. And so many of our teachers will do clubs throughout the school day to enhance and enrich the education, but also to allow opportunities for socialization for students. You see also at 1:30, there is personalized math instruction. And that is a class that is based upon STAR 360 scores. Some schools do NWEA, our school does STAR 360 testing. In fact, we're in the middle of that right now. And so we take those scores, identify weaknesses and standards and areas needed for growth. And so then the teachers in math and ELA meet and have personalized instructions with groups according to those standards. And so that's a typical day on a Monday. Then you can look at a day in the life of a student, that same student on a Tuesday. And when they aren't in live sessions, those are live sessions, then they're working in their asynchronous coursework or on their homework. You can see again, they have algebra, they have the Read Aloud Cafe, which is optional, the clubs are optional. They also have personalized instruction and then extra time in Spanish as well. If we were to see a Wednesday schedule, you would see that they have very typical to a Monday schedule, but then also we add homeroom. And something that we're doing in homeroom is really focusing on college and career readiness. What is it that students want to do after high school, and how can they get ready for that during high school? So in those homerooms, the teachers work on Tallo and Zello, and they work on their grad plans. We also have grade level assemblies once a month for each grade level. And we have we have over 1,400 students. So at each grade level, we have assemblies. And during those assemblies, we talk about the 7 mindsets, which is social emotional curriculum to help them in those areas of growth as well. During assembly also for seniors, we focus a lot on doing panel discussions of experts in various career fields. And we also have universities come in and meet with students so they can think about some of those university pathways as well. On the next slide is just a picture of the asynchronous course. So this is the course that houses their syllabus and their content. This is where they get assignments and they submit assignments. They can also get recordings of the live sessions if they were unable to attend those live sessions. And so this is what an asynchronous course looks like. I'm going to share now just a short clip of a junior class in English. And Mrs. Topizian is introducing the Great Gatsby. And you can see that she's dressed like the Roaring Twenties. She actually had a headband. When we walked into the classroom, she had music playing like that would be from the 20s. And then she's teaching the 5 themes of the 1920s, has them go into breakout rooms, which is an instructional strategy that we often use with students, where they'll go into breakout rooms and do group work. And then she brings them back together, and she'll do what's called a waterfall activity, where she asks a question and the students don't answer until she says go, and then they put their answers in the chat. And then she'll, after talking about that answer and discussing that, she'll begin talking to them more about F. Scott Fitzgerald, who is the author of The Great Gatsby, and then talking more about the 1920s. So this is a junior level English class introducing The Great Gatsby.
And what kind of change, though? Is it good change or bad change? What are we seeing? What can you, bad change? Why is it bad? Why is it a bad change? Ooh, Fatima, the people are selfish. They only cared about themselves. Controversial change, very interesting. What else? What else? What else are we seeing? Anything else you guys could think of? Oh, Maddox, yes. Yes, forcing yourself, forcing your mind to do different things, right? Absolutely, absolutely. And a drastic change. So we're seeing a lot of change. We're seeing selflessness. And this is the era of F. Scott Fitzgerald and The Great Gatsby. And believe it or not, you guys, this is the novel that you're going to be reading. It's all based on the 1920s. It's based on what was going on during that time period and how different classes worked to, kind of to achieve their American dream, but in a different way. Now let's take a look at Scott Fitzgerald for a moment. He lived that time period and he lived it to excess. Him and Zelda were both from old money. And I want you guys to think about this as you're reading the novel. The novel looks at people from old money and new money. Old money are people who are born into it, and new money are people who are making their money at all costs. It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter how they get to it, it doesn't matter how they achieve it, as long as they have it. Yeah, you make money, there you go. Scott gave up on Princeton. He decided, I'm going to go join the Army. He was stationed in Alabama, where he met his sweetheart, Zelda. Zelda was everything, the image of femininity. She was the embodiment of the flapper, okay, someone who liked to party and have fun. So Scott Fitzgerald's first novel, The Side of Paradise, was rejected multiple times before being published. And The Great Gatsby was his third published novel. Zelda tried to make her own name. She wanted to do something with her life, but honestly, she couldn't do much other than look pretty. He does, yeah, he's a handsome guy. She began suffering mental breakdowns, and some people even thought she had schizophrenia, but ended up really more bipolar. She was in and out of mental hospitals in North Carolina, while Scott basically said, hey, I'm just going to pursue my dream. Think about that. And he goes to Hollywood, okay? So they end up separating, but really never get a divorce. He died of a heart attack. He was only 44 years old. And this is really the sad part, you guys. She died in a fire in the Highland Hospital 8 years later. So very, very young and very tragic story. Now, how many of you guys play the game of Zelda, The Legend of Zelda? How many of you guys? I always see there are me's, anyone else? No? Okay, so you're familiar with The Legend of Zelda? No chance. Okay, so you know that it's nearly impossible to win that game. You can win it, right? But it's nearly impossible. That game is based on the story. In fact, the guy who created the game was so fascinated by the story of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda that he created the game based on their relationship. Yeah, so you can win the game, but it's not that easy. Those of you who have played it, yeah. Is it, Liam? I don't know much about gaming, but I've heard it's not an easy one to win. Yeah. And their lives were complicated, you guys. So when you say, Liam, that there's so much stuff in the game, yeah, it's all based on their lives because they just had a very complicated life. So it's not easy to win the game, for sure. But it is based on the story, which is interesting. So the 1920s ushered in a new era of writing. And we've talked before about modernism, we've talked about realism, we've talked about romanticism. Today we are going to focus on modernism. Modernism captures the complexities of modern life. So authors write about real things going on in real life. They captured the cynicism and disappointment people felt towards all those outdated ideas. They were just focusing on what's going on.
Just for the sake of time, I cut it off just a little bit early. Sheila, I didn't know if you wanted to close us out on the high school portion.
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay, thank you. She finished talking about the web there and then went into a short video clip for the students. That's how that ended. I know our time is almost up here, so to finish this out, I just briefly wanted to talk about special programs. We do have special programs at MVCA, and that covers special education, 504, Section 504, which are plans for students with disabilities that may not be quite as severe to need special education. And then also programs for students learning English as their second language. And so we do have we have a continuum of services for special education, from the resource program all the way to self-contained programs for students that have more severe disabilities, such as cognitive impairment or significant autism. And we provide related services for students, such as speech and language, school social work, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, to name a few of those. You know, being a public school district, we are obligated, of course, to provide all programs that any public school district would need to provide. So hopefully this gave everyone, it was a quick presentation, but hopefully you got a good snapshot of what we provide, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, we thank you for your time that you've given us this morning to talk a little bit about our school. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sandy. I really appreciate you and everyone from the Michigan Virtual Charter Academy for joining us today, spending some time with us, and for presenting such great examples of your online courses. So next, I would like to go ahead and introduce Eric Lipinski, Neil Beckwith, and Steve Nemecki from the Michigan Department of Education Charter School Office. These three presenters will educate us on the role of the state in virtual education. So I'll turn this over to you, Eric.
Thanks. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Are we seeing the screen?
Yes, you look fine.
Okay, awesome. Just want to start off by thanking the League of Women Voters and also to Michigan Virtual Charter Academy for that presentation. We're happy to be here and share some information on virtual instruction, kind of at the statewide level, give you an overview of what that looks like. One thing just to point out, virtual instruction takes place at the various types of school districts that we have in Michigan. So we have local education agencies, which are your traditional school districts like Lansing Public Schools. We have charter schools, also known as public school academies. So we might use that interchangeably throughout this presentation. So if you see PSA or public school academy, that's what we also refer to as a charter school. And then we have cyber schools, which are a subset of charter schools, which we will talk about. So with that, our agenda, we'll talk through the kind of the things I just described. We'll do a little bit on accountability and oversight, and we will discuss a little bit on student-teacher ratio. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Neil here to start.
Thanks, Eric. As Eric said, we're happy to participate in this activity today. We put together just a couple of slides, I guess, to sort of get us off and running in terms of some context for how cyber schools function in general and our role related to that in Michigan. Our role generally is through statute that was created under the revised school code, public school academies or charter schools. Generally, we refer to public school academies because that's what the law refers to, and the law requires a contract for a PSA. So we refer to that as a district. We often refer to charter schools as the individual subsets or buildings underneath those codes. So anything you want to know about in terms of what was created for charter schools is in the MCL 380-501 through 561. And so that's some light reading for you should you ever want to get down into the weeds on this. But our role is generally through the contracts that are generated that open up these PSA districts. Overall, that section of the law created 4 types of charter schools. 6As are the typical schools. They were along with urban high schools and strict discipline academies were the original types of schools that were created back in '94 and opened in '95. Those are the majority of schools were 6As. They're referred to as 6As because that's the section of the revised school code that describes them. Urban high schools can only be in Detroit and require a philanthropist to support them. And I'm kind of going through some of this pretty quickly. If you have interest in anything specific, obviously you can ask questions as we go through it or at the end. 6Es makes sense. That's the section of the law up above it. It begins in section 552, and it's the section that created cyber schools. Cyber schools were dropped into the School of Excellence legislation, so they're referred to cyber schools that are schools of excellence. And they were created in 2012. It was actually part of something that was, going on across the state, the rewrite of Public Act, or part of Public Act 277. And if you remember, the other thing that occurred then was the lift of the cap. The cap was 200. Since the cap's been lifted, in other words, since there can be as many charter contracts as authorizers will authorize, we've gone from 200 to approximately 300 now. And if you remember, the governor was mentioning the ANYs, the anytime, any way, any place, any pace initiative. And so just giving you a little context there for that period of time and the thinking that was going on when that law was generated. So we'll go on to the next slide. In Michigan, we chose the authorizer style of structure for granting these charters. One of the, essentially the difference between a charter school or a PSA and a typical traditional school is the fact that it has to be created through this contract. It's not a municipality. So an authorizer is essentially how a public school gets its charter to function and to collect state aid. There are 4 types of authorizers in Michigan: statewide public universities, which we refer to as statewide authorizers, community colleges and intermediate school districts, and then your traditional local LEAs, as Eric referred to. Community colleges, intermediate districts, and LEAs have catchment areas, and so that's why they're referred to as non-statewide authorizers. Also, the primary role of authorizers is to provide a level of accountability. In fact, it's one of its few tasks in statute is that it provides oversight, that it identifies whether a school, a charter school, should qualify for a reauthorized contract. So that's the structure that we have in Michigan. Other states have other structures. They have structures through, like in Chicago, you apply to a local city board. In other states, it's through the state organization like the MDE. Management companies are important to how charter schools function. As I indicate here, they come in all shapes and sizes. They can be full service. In other words, turnkey. They're going to do everything. They're going to provide a building. They're going to provide curriculum, all kinds of anything that's required. They can be for-profit. They can be nonprofit. They can provide just human resources. We have a lot of schools that they are considered to engage with an ESP or a management company, but really that company is only providing human resource support. Or you can actually have none at all. One of the important aspects of charter schools is they are not required to directly employ their instructional personnel. And I think that was created initially to provide more flexibility for charters to kind of be able to be more experimental, maybe save money and put it more into the curriculum and development instructional side. But at any rate, that's unique. And so it has created a series of unique employment types in Michigan. Naming conventions, it's kind of been going around in Michigan that, you know, CMOs are typically referred to as nonprofits. ESPs or EMOs are typically referred to as for-profit management companies. But it is important to remember that all charter schools and cyber schools are required by law to be nonprofit. Now, specific to cyber schools, and I think we talked about this a little bit on the next slide. We currently have 15 cyber schools in Michigan. Most of the early cyber schools were created by the statewide providers or the statewide authorizers like universities. Since that initial creation, really more of our more recent cyber schools have been authorized by local school districts. And there's probably a number of reasons for that. There are some limitations to the number of cybers in Michigan. You can have one cyber per each traditional LEA. So obviously that's a high number. That would be, you know, over 800 or so. Of those cybers, only 15 can be by statewide authorizers, even though we're just about halfway to that number. So that really isn't going to be much of a factor. Each cyber school is limited at 10,000. We don't have any cyber schools that have reached that cap. It talks in the legislation a little bit about year 1 and year 2, but the ultimate cap is at 10,000. Some other specific requirements that you might find interesting are that all students are required to be full-time. And so this is unique to cybers rather than the 6As or the other types of cyber schools. You know, partly the idea would be that they weren't to be competing with all, you know, other LEAs by trying to provide bits and pieces of education. So they are required to be full-time students. In other words, you know, they can't be doing shared time programs. Cyber schools must, and this is unique, hire an experienced EMO, and we'll use EMO or CMO as a sort of interchangeable concepts here. We do engage with the authorizer to check this. We're using the iNACL document and a platform to work with the authorizer to make sure that we're meeting this portion of the law. Basically, it's looking at data and it's looking at a number of other elements to try to ensure that the EMO that the school is engaging with has that level of experience, and that ultimately goes to the superintendent's office for review. There's a number of additional contract requirements. I'm not going to go deeply into that, but we could provide that if you had an interest in what are other requirements that we check for in the contracts for cyber schools. But a couple of things are the requirement for individual learning plans, the requirements that teachers will do grading, not the platforms themselves, the requirement that in terms of providing computers and internet, some of those kinds of things are included here. So that kind of gives you some of the context for the cyber part. And just again, before I hand it back to Steve, you know, there's at least at the department side, there's a pretty distinct difference between cyber schools and then other types of virtual education, primarily just through some of these specific contract requirements that I've identified in cybers.
Okay, so next couple slides I'll be doing. The first one's talking about there's some different things that occurred, and we'll get to that in a minute. There's a lot of new laws that were put into place solely for 2021 as it stands right now. So anybody that's providing virtual instruction, they're governed by 21F law, which is, if you wanted, like Neil said, wanting to get in the weeds, the MCL is 388.1621F, and Section 50D of the Pupil Accounting Manual. 50D in the Pupil Accounting Manual was all derived from the law, so it was all created there. And then courses that students are going to take virtually, they have to be in the course syllabus, which is published in the statewide course catalog. And if not there, then the districts, all districts have to have a course catalog that's approved by their school board. And in order to take these virtual courses, there has to be parental consent unless the student's over 18. And then for grades 6 through 12, the students may request 2 virtual during any academic term. And then enrollment in one of the first 2 virtual courses may be denied based on, there's a bunch of reasons that we're not going to go into here today that are outlined in the Pupil Accounting Manual. And it is possible for students to do virtual grades K-5, and there's some rules that follow that. The one little caveat to point out that some people sometimes they're not sure, like, well, what is determined, or how has somebody become virtual? And a little note for you is that a student could attend a brick and mortar building 4 days a week and still be considered virtual. It all depends on how the district sets up the programming. And that was a discussion that came up a lot in the summer when people were going to shift with COVID to virtual hybrid settings, and the new laws weren't in place, and people are trying to get ready for the 2021 school year, and the legislation, there was nothing going on until really late in the summer, and then there was a big shift in what they were going to do and how they had to provide everything. So that conversation came up quite a bit. People were thinking, well, what is the determination? And some are going to be in the building, every other day, and really that's fine. It doesn't matter if they're in the building part-time or 4 days a week, 2 days a week. They can still be considered virtual, and they could follow all the rules that go along with that. And so if the pupil's going to be enrolled in more than 2, then there's a few conditions that have to be met. Is it in the best interest of the pupil? There's conversations to be had around that. The pupil agrees with the district recommendation. There's an educational development plan, but every student has to do that. Grades 7 through 12 in the state already. That's in legislation. For K-6, there's some other elements. One of the things that we had talked to a lot of districts, like, what do we do for K-6 EDP? And it's just trying to find out. They did make it a little, it's an easier, it's easy to meet the way the law's written, and in the manual, it's just, maybe find out what a student's interest is. And that was something that we shared with districts, because we were meeting with districts daily when they were trying to figure out what they were going to do for this current school year. So then we came into all the legislation that went through for this school year. All the districts needed to submit a return and learn plan that was approved by their ISD. And then the days and hours that are normally in place, which is 180 days and 1,098 hours, those requirements were removed, but the districts are responsible for delivering the same content. So if you were in a normal year, it was 180 days, 1,098, doesn't matter how many days you're putting in place this year, you had to have something in writing that you were going to meet the same requirements. So that didn't change anything. Some of the things that were added in the law were that you needed to have two-way community interactions each week for at least 75% of the pupils enrolled. And if not, and that's something that they're supposed to post on their websites, and if not, then there could be some possibilities of funding that would get affected there. The other thing that didn't go away, or was included too, was that during the count period, the 4-week count period, is that you had to have 1 two-way per week during the count period with every student. And then the other big one was the funding is normally a 90%, 10%. The fall count is 90% and it's blended with the 10% from the previous spring. This year they did a super blend of funding, which was 75% of last year's enrollment and 25% of this year's. And so the other thing here on the two-way communication was that they expanded the definition. What they were trying to do here is make it as easy as possible for that to take place. So that could be, anything, phone calls, text messaging, emails, but it wasn't just to that. Those are just, any face-to-face. A lot of schools were doing synchronous learning, kind of like we're doing right now. So if I was we were doing the course or our particular class and Neil was in my class, then, that's my two-way communication. He's in my class and that counts as attendance. And then we were good to go there. So as of right now, we haven't heard anything indication, and no indications on if there's going to be anything extended. As far as we know, that as the laws were written, they said for 2021 only. And so that'll be, to be determined later by the legislation.
Thanks, Steve. I'll do a little discussion on the topic of oversight and accountability. One caveat is that we have specific offices and people who work with pupil accounting and work with accountability. So this is kind of just a little primer on it. So in terms of pupil accounting, there are pupil accounting, and Steve mentioned it a little bit, there are pupil accounting rules that all districts need to follow, whether you're any of those categories that we talked about earlier, from the LEA to a charter school to a cyber charter school. There are additional participation requirements for virtual instruction associated with each of those. Cyber is a little bit different from a virtual LEA, a virtual traditional school district. So there's a link to the pupil accounting manual there. Section 50C is what deals with cyber schools. Section 50D, which Steve mentioned, is what deals with virtual instruction in other formats, in your LEAs, in your other charter schools. And the thing that's important about that in terms of accountability is that the intermediate school district is going to come and deal with each school district each year and say, how are you meeting the requirements? You're a cyber school. What have you done to meet the requirements to operate virtually? And the same thing with the other types that we mentioned. In terms of accountability, we have a lot of measures that are related to accountability. Most specifically, we have the SGP, which is your student growth percentile, which measures student growth in comparison to other students with similar prior test scores. If you want to learn more about that, there's a ton of information on the accountability site on SGP and other measures like that. Assessment proficiency, that's one you hear about all the time in the news. But in general, you're talking about SAT, the M-STEP, how many students, what percentage of students are proficient, and things along those lines. The point I wanted to make here is that accountability is handled the same way for all districts, all the different types of categories we've talked about today, traditional charter, cyber charter, the accountability takes place the same way for each of those. You could also, if you want to go find some specific information on a particular school, you can go to My School Data for school and district level information. There's a link. I imagine we're going to share this with our friends at the league, and they can get it out to the constituents. And if you want to follow some of these links. The last piece on charter schools, which Neil already mentioned, is there's that extra level of oversight for charter schools in terms of an authorizing contract. So that's another important piece when we talk about accountability, especially with charter schools. Just a quick discussion on student-teacher ratios. This was a specific question that was asked for this presentation. And I think probably the goal was to make some comparison between a cyber school and a traditional school. And when we started to look into it, we found that that information isn't publicly disaggregated. I think it would be valuable to be able to make that comparison. So it's something we're going to reach out to our accountability folks on and see if it's something that we could potentially share in the future. But at this point, we just didn't have that data available. What we did have was, according to this Fast Facts document that's up on the MBE website, is an overall student-teacher ratio of 23:1, which would again include all of those categories. But yeah, valuable conversation to look at it in terms of comparison. So if we come again to present to you, potentially we might have some more information on that. That would be the hope. So
the only other thing, Eric, is we could we only have 15 schools, and they can look up. You can look at the student-teacher ratio for each district, right?
That's true. If you wanted to go look on a district by district basis, I was just if you wanted to compare all LEAs to all cybers, that's just not something we had ready today. So, but yeah, on that my school data site, ton of information as it relates to student counts, staffing information, all that accountability information. I think they just revamped it, so it's I often go there to check on various things. With that, there's our contact information. Feel free to reach out. I know we're getting close to the time of conclusion here, but we're always on. So shoot us a message if you have questions. And I know I speak for Neil and Steve and myself when I say we're happy to have been here today, and we're always happy to help when we can. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate you and Neil and Steve joining us today for the presentations. All right, we have just a couple minutes left. I'll turn this over, maybe Betty. Do we have a couple questions that we've come in for any of our presenters today?
We have several questions. So the first would be, how long do students stay in virtual schools? Do they remain there for their entire school career? Or is there a lot of turnover from year to year?
Well, that is a good question. This is Sandy. Unfortunately, our head of school had to leave, so I tend to look at things from a special education perspective. I don't have statistics. I can tell you generally that we tend to probably have students leave more frequently than in a brick and mortar. I don't have the exact percentages, but I do know that each fall we have more enrollments in special education than you would see in a brick and mortar. So we're often a last resort for students, especially at the high school level. They've tried many other things by the time they come to us. So we work very hard to keep them enrolled when they get to us at high school. And for other students, they may be with us for, just a number of years and then move on, to a different school district. So again, I don't have the statistics on it. We have some that do stay for their entire career, though. I know that.
Thank you. So maybe someone from MDE can define what is a school of excellence?
Well, a school of excellence was a category of schools that were created in 2010 to actually allow additional charters to be granted above the 200. And so there's two categories of schools of excellence. I'm trying to give the short answer. Two categories of schools of excellence in the original legislation. One was that if you were a really high performer, then you could be identified as a school of excellence, or a school, and then you could be transferred to school of excellence designation, and then another school could be opened up in your place over and above the 200 cap. So ultimately, it was to encourage higher performing schools and to allow a format for there to be more than 200 schools given charter contracts. And then cybers were dropped into that category in 2012 after the legislation was generated.
Thank you. And can maybe both of you deal with access to the internet in both rural and urban areas? This year, we're hearing a lot about people who are having problems getting on and staying on the internet.
Yeah, I believe Randy answered that in chat, but what we do for our families at Michigan Virtual Charter Academy is we have purchased a number of hotspots, and we provide those to our families who are struggling with internet where they live. So we will provide those free of charge to our families to access the internet.
Yeah, and that was common conversation over the summer, meeting with school districts, that they were going to work on providing hotspots. Or I'll just give a quick example is they would put a hotspot on a bus and park it like maybe in a small, in a neighborhood or near an apartment complex, so that anybody that lived in an apartment complex could have access. The other piece around that is why some of the legislation was in a way relaxed, because some folks that are in rural areas that don't have access, that normally for being a virtual student, let's say if you were dropping off packets for students and then they would return them, that wouldn't be countable, but it was for this year. So that was one of the pieces to try and handle when the legislation, realized that, hey, this is a big problem, that we don't have the connectivity that we need to in the state, in the infrastructure, and it's going to be something that needs to be worked on moving forward.
And one last question as we head towards 1 o'clock. How are you dealing, Sandy, with music, with physical education, since those are also requirements by the Department of Education, music and gym and art programs?
Oh, yes, I know that we offer physical education and art, as part of our curriculum. Sheila, I don't know about music.
We do. We offer music appreciation and music courses. So we don't have a program such as band or choir like a brick and mortar would, but we do have music theory, music appreciation. In fact, our music teacher has done a wonderful job of connecting with professionals in the field of music and Skypes them in and has them give lessons and connects that way. So, and we have physical education. And so then students have assignments to go outside or to do certain things to meet those standards. And then we also have the visual arts, and students receive kits, art kits at the high school level that go to them so they can use those tools for the art classes.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone for attending, participating today. Melinda, back to you.
All right. Well, again, thank you to all of our presenters. It was a wonderful webinar. Thanks so much. And thanks to all of you that were able to join us today. Just a reminder that this webinar is the first of a two-part series. Part 2 will be presented on Wednesday, February 10th. The second webinar will feature Professor Michael Barbour from the Touro University in California. Dr. Barbour has done extensive research about online schools and will discuss his research and others' research with us at that webinar. We'll have plenty of time during that webinar for question and answers, so we hope that you can join us. Again, that will be on Wednesday, February 10th. So I think that does it for us today. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.